Hello, hello, Amplify You family. Michelle Abraham here today. I am so excited, guys. I've got a great guest for you today. We're going to be talking about all sorts of really cool things when it comes to business, your mindset. I've got an amazing guest with me here today, Masha Pavlova. Masha, how are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. So excited to be here, Michelle.
Yes, we got so many great things so many great directions that we could take this interview that I didn't want to just like say it all at the beginning. I wanted to leave it a little bit for a surprise, but this is an Ask the Expert interview. So Masha is a thought leader, innovator, speaker, you're a coach, not a coacher, a coach. What kind could be a coacher too, right? A coach as
That's
well
right.
as the number one best-selling author and founder of the MDP Studio and ESC by the U brand. She builds processes to connect leaders, change makers, and visionaries with high impact projects, funding, and resources necessary to solve pressing problems such as business sustainability, education, and housing in communities around the globe. And her and I were just discussing how she has spoken on so many incredible stages. She's co-authored books with Joe Fatelli. She's co-authored books with James Redfield and Ken Honda, and spoken on stages like Harvard with Blue Talks, in LA, as well as so many other amazing places. So, Masha, it's so exciting to be with you. You're a big believer about collaboration, like I am. And you're just looking at connecting people and projects together. And it's so awesome that you're here with us today. So thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Michelle. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. Well, let's dive into kind of what we were discussing before we jumped on. You guys, all the best conversations, I tell you, happen before we press record. We're sorry we can't let you in on all of those, but we'll try to do our best to bring you up to speed. So we were discussing about how there's so many things that stop entrepreneurs from launching a podcast, and there's all these stories that come up in our head and all these things that like happen. And in fact, some of you know my personal story is took me 4 years to launch my own podcast because Masha, I had a lot of those stories going on in my head too. So I know you work with a lot of entrepreneurs. That's a common thing with entrepreneurs? It's not just us podcasters, right?
Oh my gosh. I think this is just a human thing. Like, I think it goes out to everything that we do. It's just we have that little voice inside our heads that comes in and it's like, oh, I'm this or I'm that, or this is not the right timing, or this is going on. And it's like, well, why? At what point did we start agreeing to this?
Right. And how do we like stop those voices from like preventing us from taking action to like what we actually really want to do?
Oh, great question. And I think the first thing is that there's absolutely no judgment of that part because that part keeps us safe. And there's something about it that serves us, which is why we are here and which is why we keep doing what we're doing, because there's a part that's showing up that's like, oh, well, this is working. So what needs to change? And in fact, until we recognize that, yes, this part is serving me and I want something better or different, it doesn't have any reason to change.
Mm.
And saying that, as soon as you shift that and say, okay, thank you. And I do want something different. And here's what I want. It unlocks all of these doors because you stop knocking at the one that's closed.
That makes a lot of sense. And so like the shift can be quite quick once but I feel like we have to make that decision. Like you said, you have to make the decision and then have a plan. And it's funny because it's like such I would say like cliche thing to say about entrepreneurs. Like if you gotta make the plan, work the plan, and otherwise you're not going anywhere. But it's actually true. Your brain can't really actually know where you want to go without it being like a really clear decision. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there's really like there's something to understand. There's two different mindsets, right? There's the mindset of, oh my gosh, well, I don't know if I can. And then the problem you're solving is if I can, right? The if is there. And so your mind goes back and forth within the if. Versus if you make a decision that, yes, this is what I want, and yes, this is what I'm doing, the problem that you're solving becomes different. You're actually solving for the how. You're in the creative mindset versus the limited belief system of, well, can I really do this? Versus, no, I can. Now let me figure out the how.
Right. And so for our podcasters, just thinking about the ones that are sitting at home right now, they're still afraid to press that record button. There's some
Mm.
things that are going on in their heads, like who's going to listen to me? I'm not good enough, and who am I to be the expert on this? What are some of your words of advice for those sitting at home, saying having those thoughts run through their heads?
Oh my gosh. First of all, it still comes back every once in a while. Who am I to blank, right? And the bigger you get, it's not like those things go away. It's you build up the traction and the know-how and the wherewithal and the skill set to be able to say, I hear you and. I remember one of the first people who ever saw me on stage before I even saw myself on stage. The idea would terrify me. To give a little bit of context, and it seems like forever ago, but it's been within the last maybe 7-8 years that this happened. I started networking, and I remember I would get up in front of 15 people, 5 of which I knew, and I would get up and I would get a minute to introduce myself, say, hi, my name is Masha Pavlova. I'm the CEO and, of this and this company, and this is what I do. And I remember I got up and my body was literally physically shaking in front of 15 people, 5 of which I knew. And from that space, I could not imagine myself going on these big stages. I couldn't imagine myself talking in front of even like an audience of 50, right? That was so beyond what I could possibly imagine. And at the time, I had a dear friend and almost like a mentor role at the point. And I remember him saying something. We had a 5-hour conversation. We just went into this deep discussion of some of these big issues. And he goes, Marsha, I see you on this huge stage in front of tens of thousands of people. And I just had I almost had a meltdown at the idea. What are you talking about? Me and a stage? That's crazy. And he goes, what you need to understand, and this is something I've carried with me since he said this, is he said, it doesn't matter if you're talking to 5 or 50 or 50,000 people. It doesn't matter because you're still talking to an individual. There's something in it for one person. And that's all you have to worry about. If that's the only life that you impact, you've done your job.
I love it.
Yeah.
I've said that many times before too. It's just like, oh, I love this say. I love that because on a podcast too, the best podcasts don't talk to hey everyone, how's everyone doing? He's like, hi, how are you today? Glad you're doing good. It's lines in the ears of one person. It comes across so much better than the, hey everyone, we're going to do this today.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
That's awesome. And so now that's come to fruition. You're standing on stages in front of thousands of people. How cool is that?
It's still terrifying. It's still terrifying. And that's the thing I have to remember. It's so strange because you interact with these incredible people. And again, in our minds, we have this thing about the us and the them, right? We have this is how it is for them, and it must be easy, and it must be this, and it must be that. And I don't know about you, Michelle, but for me, it's like I still get nervous, right? It's still, the nerves are still there. And I draw this line about, okay, my stuff is over here, and there's time for me to deal with my stuff. And I have my coach for that. I have my therapist for that. I have programs for that. And then as soon as I step into the other side of the line, it's not about me anymore. It's not about my stuff. It's not about anything else other than serving my mission and my message. And my mission is towards the one person I'm impacting today, right now in this moment.
Oh, that's so good. I love the way you said that because then that helps our brain separate our stuff from our mission, because sometimes those voices get in there and can conflict with us being able to share a message and make the impact that we want to make because it's so confused by and worried about our own stuff. So I love that. When you step on stage or turn on a microphone or record, it's all about keeping that one person in mind that you're going to change their life. And it's so true. My life was changed by podcasting. That's why I originally got into it. I was a listener, and it helped me overcome postpartum depression and kind of got me back into my mojo and got my wheels turning again. And after being a busy entrepreneur and going to have a baby, and then love being a mom, but my business brain went to mush and didn't feel very motivated afterwards. But to get back out and get walking and put my earbuds in and listen to a podcast, oh my God, that podcast had such a huge impact in my life.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And cool.
It is amazing. It's life-changing for both yourself and for them. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think our podcasters or entrepreneurs or speakers need to remember that. And I think it's such a good message that you're bringing today, to remember that it's not about you once you step on stage. It's about serving that one person whose life is going to make a difference. And I can't tell you how many podcasters have told me that they've heard from their audience and they've changed someone's life. And that's exactly what you just said. If you change one person's life, you've done your job, right? That's amazing. And so then you can go on to, make a difference in many people's lives too. But having that serve that one person, I think is pretty awesome.
That's right. That's right.
So, your business, you started in branding and photography and helping people with their brands. What would you suggest to people starting a new business today when it comes to branding and getting your voice clear and getting your message out there in a way? And I think that clarity sometimes convolutes some of those voices in your head. You're not super clear. My experience is that the more you speak in a microphone, the more clear you become about your message. Any words of advice for people starting, wanting to share their message with and creating their own brand?
Oh, absolutely. I have this theory around branding, and it feels like it challenges what most people believe what branding actually is. So to define a brand, to define what the branding is, right? It's the perspective and perception that the other party has about what it is that you're creating and putting out there. And oftentimes we do this thing where we talk about, we start outside of ourselves and we say, well, who is my demographic? Who is my psychographic? Let's describe this person. And then based on what the thing that I'm offering is, I'm going to design the color scheme and the words and the messaging and everything like that. And what happens is it almost feels disconnected. It either feels disconnected from us, from our mission, from our purpose, or from the client themselves even, because we're looking at them from a very objectified perspective. And the way that I learned branding, the way that I talk about branding is really from the inside out, from here's what I'm trying to accomplish for myself, here's what I'm trying to accomplish for my person that I'm serving, and here's how it reflects from the inside of my story, from the vulnerability of what I have gone through, from what has created me and my journey and my solutions, because we oftentimes create what we needed way back when, going through the struggles that we've gone through in our lives. And so being able to reflect on that and bring that into the brand, it creates almost an embodiment of its own, like it becomes its own entity. And that entity speaks into who we are as well as who our client is trying to become. That's the most beautiful thing about the brand, because then everything else you're adding to it. You're saying, well, if this entity exists and it represents all of these components, what does that look like? What does that sound like? And then you start stepping into that space. And your client meets you there versus trying to accomplish something and then try to force it on your client.
I mean, that sounds so funny when you say it, but it's so how we all usually create things. And isn't it interesting that we're having this conversation today, because I've had this conversation several times in the last month or so with other entrepreneurs where we were kind of realizing we did a really good job of branding the business, but not branding ourselves as the thought leaders. And so I feel like, myself included, a lot of entrepreneurs are going back to the drawing board right now and be like, if Michelle Abraham, what is her mission and what is her beliefs and what is her passion and what's her mission versus Amplify You that she created, and Amplify You has its own mission and vision. And how does that work into Michelle Abraham's brand? And because we're doing a lot of shifting over here at Amplify You right now, where Braden's taking over the CEO role, and I am moving more into a visionary role, it's kind of made me start to think of what is that? What does that look like? And what I need to start branding myself. I was like, that's really crazy that I don't have a personal website or that kind of thing. So it's interesting. It's interesting you brought that up today, because I've been going through that in my head myself. Do you feel like that is something that every business owner should have their own personal brand to versus a program or a service that they offer?
Oh, 100%. In fact, there's this transition that's been happening in the world that I absolutely am in love with. So we previously to even I think even going to the pandemic, that this was still a reality. We had this resistance of including all of us in business. Yeah, how many times have you heard of?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. This doesn't belong in the business. Spirituality doesn't belong in business. Your personal stuff doesn't belong in business. Your emotions. I'm sorry. I'm not saying that, come and vent to your clients. That's not the goal, right? Still show up in integrity, show up in your values, and all of you gets to show up, because that's where all the vulnerability is. That's what we're being asked of right now from the customers, from the listeners, from the people who we're serving. And so if I'm showing up in my integrity, in alignment with my brand, what happens is all of the services that you have, all of the products, all of the businesses, like I'm a serial entrepreneur. I have all of these different branches of what I do, and they are all different facets of the same mission, which is embodied through my work. So it's yes, you absolutely get to have your own brand because every single part of what you do is simply a facet of that brand through different skill sets, through different products, different services.
I feel like it's so cool. Like the world is going to this where now every person has their own personal brand, and what they do for work or they do for fun or whatever is just a part of that personal mission and that personal brand. I think that's really cool. That is not something when I started in business like almost 20 years ago now, that wasn't the case. It was like you put a website up for your business. What's your business? Who's your avatar? And just like you were explaining earlier, we like throw that branding onto the off to the onto the avatar, right? And then onto the customer, right? And they've got to match it. And so seems like such a more natural way of like being you and showing up as you. And I'm wondering if that's stemming from like social media, where, on the outside of social media, everyone seems to be like perfect and like no flaws and causing a lot of mental health, I think, issues with, the followers and especially like our younger generation. And so I think being real and vulnerable in everything that you do is so important to just help our followers know that you're not perfect either. And this is part of real life and you're doing life and business all together, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, think about it from this perspective. If we are coming in and we're, first of all, if we're trying to be perfect and we're trying to be skill-based, right? If we cut everything else out, the goal originally was, here's my skill. Here's how good I am at what I do, right? And I'm better than everybody else. That was the original marketing, right? Here's why I'm better. Here's why I'm different. And if we think about it from a perspective of cutting ourselves out, then really, what is your unique proposition? Then you're trying to compete, then you get into competing on price. Well, if somebody else can do the same service as me, then we're looking at price because then we have an absence of value. And if we're adding more value, then we're giving more of ourselves, well, somehow cutting ourselves out. Where instead we can approach it from a perspective of my unique story and my unique way of approaching this, my unique vulnerabilities, my unique experiences, combined with all of the skill sets that I have is what makes the unique proposition, because then that cannot be replicated. Then it will speak to my person because I'm showing up authentically and that can't be matched by anybody else.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. It's like your unique voice. Like there could be like 100 podcasts on your topic, but your voice is not in there in the mix. And so you're going to attract the right people by sharing your story. So good. Yeah, this is such a great approach to branding and marketing that I think is refreshing. And it's not, I don't know, I don't see it out there a lot in mainstream marketing and branding practices. So you're onto something, Masha. I love it. Tell us a little bit about the work that you're currently doing. So are you still helping people with their branding, or have you evolved into doing some other, I know you're multifaceted and you have lots of great projects on the go. So tell us what you're up to.
Yeah, definitely multifaceted. I'm curious if there's a line for when you become a serial entrepreneur, like how many businesses gets you that title, but I'm definitely
yeah.
I'm definitely been in that space for a while. So essentially what I'm doing right now is, it looks like a lot of different things, but the way that I serve is I love people and I love processes. And so I love bringing people and processes together. And so what I do and how I apply that is I apply that on the personal side, I apply it to the business side, as well as to big global projects. And so it looks like, some of it looks like branding and marketing. Some of it looks like personal coaching and innovation through shifting businesses, as well as then innovation on a global scale, working with big picture projects and figuring out how do we do this thing better.
That's awesome. And so you mostly working with entrepreneurs then?
Yes, mostly entrepreneurs, people with big missions and visions, people who have something really big that they want to create and achieve in their life.
And I know you're connecting entrepreneurs with some bigger global projects too. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I've in my mission to show people that there's nothing that's impossible, because that's been my goal in my life, is showing that anything you set your mind to, you can truly achieve, as cliche as that sounds, and it's easier than you think. And so in that space, what I've been able to accomplish in the last 6 months is extraordinary. I started working with global projects. We're talking 6, 7, 8, 9 figures, and being able to address housing and education, business sustainability, agriculture, things like that. And what I do with my role in that is I come in and I look at the systems, which are normally very closed off. They're usually very internalized. And so even if people are in the same industry, in the same space, they aren't aware of each other. And when we think about it, even from an entrepreneur's perspective, we approach things and we look at competition as competition versus this opportunity to grow our entire field and make impact on a global scale, because you have a unique offer that you're offering, that you're bringing to the table. But your client is not just a point on the map, right? You're coming in at a point in their story. And so when that happens is when you look at it from this perspective, you recognize that there are other points on that story that you don't necessarily serve, but they need. So how can you create alliances to be able to serve them on a different level by combining what you offer with others? And in that space, there's opportunity to work with incredible organizations and partners and people and investors and sponsors and everything, because in that space, people think differently, people work differently, because their goal is bigger than themselves. So that's the space I love to play in and get people into.
I love it. Now, you really specialize on helping people see that anything is possible and getting their mindset to it. So do you have a couple of tips that you can leave us with today on how to adjust our mindset so that we believe that anything is possible? And once you have a goal or have an idea of something you want to accomplish, how do you get going on that to make sure your brain stays with you on the plan?
Yes. Absolutely. Well, the first thing to recognize is that, first of all of our experiences are valid and true. At the same time, what our mind does is this interesting thing, and our mind is wired this way to keep us safe, right? Is it's wired to confirm our reality that we believe in, which causes us to essentially live in a bubble of our own. And in that bubble, everything that happens confirms our belief system. And if our belief system is the way that you recognize this in yourself is if you say, well, my industry is this or is that, or it's not this or is not that. People won't do this. People won't spend money on this stuff. People won't listen. People won't do this and this. So you generalize and make a them statement, and you make that statement to be true. What I would invite you to do is to say, well, first of all, I invite you to start paying attention to that. Because what's going to happen is you're going to start noticing all of the times that you do that, and you're going to go, well, why am I doing that? And the question to ask yourself is that really true? Why am I telling myself that story? Because what's on the other side of that story is running into examples of things that are something different. So, for example, we all know the car, right? The car situation where confirmation bias, where if I'm buying a red truck, all of a sudden I'm seeing red trucks everywhere. Yeah. See if you can apply that same theory to what it is that you're trying to achieve. And instead of sitting in your bubbles and saying, well, people don't care about this stuff, see if you can find the people who do.
So good.
That would be the biggest first step. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great first step for sure. I remember when I was pregnant, I would see pregnant ladies everywhere. Now I don't see pregnant ladies anywhere. So.
That's right. Yeah.
Is there a next step?
The next step would be to, once you start finding those people, right? See if you can make this curious experiment, right? We love to gamify things. Our minds are very, very good at that. So make a game out of it, make a structure of it and say, can I notice 3 things this week? Can I notice 3 things today that are maybe more of what I want versus what I'm recognizing I have or my belief system has? And once you start finding those areas, those people, those places, see if you can shift to hanging out in those spaces. It's kind of the being able to put yourself around the people that you want to be more like. And what you'll recognize is your reality starts kind of being challenged, right? And it's hard and it's scary. And there's this point of oh, do I really do this? And do I really belong here? And, the imposter syndrome comes up and the fear comes up and the worthiness comes up. And at that point, you have a conscious choice. You can say, okay, well, I want to stay safe and I'm not quite ready yet. And that's okay. Or you can say, you know what? That space doesn't really serve me anymore. I want to go play over there and figure out what that looks like. And have fun with it. Be creative with it. And don't expect it to be hard. It doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to take a long time. It can be fun. It can be easy. It can be simple. And the further you go, the more confirmation you have, the easier it gets.
I like that. You don't have to be a billionaire to hang out with the billionaires.
That's right. That's right.
I love this saying too. Like if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
That's right. That's right.
Challenging you to get into bigger rooms. Yeah, that's cool. Is there another step?
I think the biggest, I think one of the biggest things that's there when you're on that other side and you start recognizing and accepting, this is still mind-boggling to me, is I've had the opportunity to talk to some of the most incredible people in the world, and you talk with them, and we have this perception of like, oh well, they must be like this or they must be like that, and we have this, again, the us and them, right? And you have conversations, and they're no different from anybody else. Like everybody struggles, everybody has this, everybody has that going on. It's just the way that they address those things is going to be different. The level at which they play is going to be different. But there's no difference in who they are versus who we are. There's absolutely nothing there. And so embrace that. See if you can find those pieces of what you admire about them in yourself and mirror that into their life, into your own life. That'll be my biggest suggestion. That's what I live by.
Those are great. I love those. Great tips. So good. Amplify You family. I hope you were paying attention to those and writing those down. Those are writer downers. Those 3 steps, I think, can take you really far. And in going towards what you want. And I think first, like making that decision to what you want, and then stop being addicted to the old stories that you're telling yourself, right? I think there's an addiction there of the stories that you're telling yourself. And I think once you present a new story and get addicted to a new story.
That's right.
So good. Masha, it's been so much fun having you here today. Thank you so much for being here with us. Any last words for our audience before we let you go today?
Yes, I'm getting this message here, and I feel like there's somebody listening who really needs to hear this. It's like a 30-minute interview with the late Bob Proctor. And he talks about marathons, and he said there's a difference between professional marathon runners and people who just try to run marathons. There's a point in the marathon that will happen that you feel like you cannot take another step. You feel like you're just done, right? You're ready to give up. You're ready to walk away. You feel like your body physically cannot take another step. And the difference between professional marathon runners is that they know that is actually part of the process. And because of that, they can make it to the finish line. So if you're struggling with something, if there's something that's coming up and says, oh my gosh, I really don't know if I can take another step, remember that that's actually part of the process. And what's in the other side is growth and prosperity and expansion and everything you want. So take that next step. It becomes easier from there.
Wow, that's amazing. I really love that. And on the other side, the grass is greener. I know it's a terrible thing to say that it's, we use that saying so often, but I love the analogy of the marathon runner and like knowing that as part of the process. Can you imagine removing ourselves from within that stage where you're like, I can't do anything else, and being like, looking at it from a bigger perspective of like, oh, that's just part of this. And on the other side of that is this amazing rainbows and gold coins.
That's right. There's still a little bit of struggle. Like let's keep this real. Like there's still stuff that's going to come up.
Yeah.
And you're going to be okay.
Yeah. And for the marathon runner, maybe it's like hamburgers and milkshakes, and they're on the other side. There you go.
That's right. That's right.
Awesome. So great. Masha, can you tell us a little bit more about where to find out more about you and what you want us to do to connect with you?
Oh, absolutely. You can find me at connectwithmasha.com, and that's MASHA, connectwithmasha.com. You'll find all of my current projects going on right now, my businesses, and there's a calendar link if you want to get in touch. I would love to help support you in any way, shape, or form. And see if anything there speaks to you, and let's connect.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here on Amplify You today. Amplify You family, make sure you connect, reach out to Masha, give her some love, and review and rate this episode. Give her some love. And thank you for being a guest today, Masha. It's been so much fun having you here.
Thank you so much, Michelle. It's been a pleasure.
All right, Amplify You family, take care. Have a great week. We'll see you again next week.